One of the things I've been meaning to change on the layout is this retaining wall, where it just ends and then there's a gap and a bit of a cliff face and then a tunnel entrance. I had a comment quite a long while ago about the engineers wouldn't have just stopped at the retaining wall and not gone right up against the tunnel wall. And I thought about this and I thought the guy was being a bit picky, but then the more I thought about it, he's quite right. You know, there wouldn't be a gap like that, and this was probably done in my, well, I think it was a good few years ago now, early modelling stage, and I think it needs improvement, and I think he was quite right when I think upon it. So what I've been doing is just keeping an eye out for a bit more of this Metcalf retaining wall. Be it only cardboard, it's not bad once it's weathered, but I didn't want to buy a whole new section when there was only really one piece I needed. And sure enough, as usual, I found something at the toy fair, and somebody was just selling some of the broken bits of the retaining wall in a box. I think I got them, it might have been a 50p, might have been a £1, just, you know, for the odd bits. And all I really need is one piece, because if I offer it up, that will be probably enough to go up to the tunnel mouth. So I'm gonna finish this, and hopefully it'll look a bit better, because it does look a bit odd, and I do want to improve it. I'm all ready now to slip the retaining wall into place. I'm going to hot melt glue it into place. Got a little bit more tidying up to do before I do it, so a bit of trimming, but this should just slip into place. It's quite tight actually. But down this side of the retaining wall, on the old wall, the brick paper's a little bit damaged from where the sculpt mould was up against it, but there's no point in trying to get it off because you'll just make it worse. So I will just hide that with a bit of airbrushing and some undergrowth and grubbiness down the side of the retaining wall. I've packed this out with another piece of the wall which will be lost behind here, and bushes coming over, you won't see it, and the same behind the wall. At the base of the wall I'm probably I could get some sculpt mould out and finish it off, or I might just cheat and put a few overgrown bushes at the bottom just to cover it over. But then I'll get the water-based colours out and use them with the airbrush and just tone it in and try and blend it in like it's been there all the time. That's one of the pitfalls of using an old model kit that you bought from somewhere. The glue might come apart. I generally don't use a lot of cardboard in the loft for a good reason. There's damp and temperature changes up here. I don't really like cardboard kits. But once that's got a coating of weathering on it, that protects it to a certain degree. In these gaps it wants to be sort of possibly a bit of hard standing, so amongst my bits and pieces I've got some of this foam board that I use for hard standing, you know, concrete hard standing for the loco sheds and that, and I'm just going to cut some pieces up and put them in there. I'll probably hot melt glue them in as well, just to give it some sort of concrete look inside the arches like the other arches have got, but still merging into the grass verge in front. Apologies for getting in the way of what I'm doing, and so you can't see it very well on camera. It's very awkward to work in this place, up against the side of the house sort of thing, and there's not many camera angles I can get in from, so hopefully you can see what I've been doing, and I'm just going to continue on adding some weathering now to the edges of the cardboard, as you know, the raw edges stand out. So I'm just using some Tamiya weathering powders now with a cotton wool bud. It helps to rub it in with your fingers occasionally as well, just to take some of the harsh weathering from the cotton wool bud and spread it around really, and just blend it all. I say, I'm sorry I'm in front of the camera, but I can't really find a better angle to shoot this from. Every so often, if I just move back, you can see how it's going. To weather this retaining wall with the airbrush, I'll be using Vallejo German grey it is, and very well thinned down. I thinned it down with acrylic thinners, or you could use water, but as it's such a small amount I've used acrylic thinners. All ready to go now. I'll just do a little test piece. Yeah, that's going to be fine. So just lightly dust it over to darken it like the wall on the left. It's not bad. If I turn the light off like that and take the cardboard away at the back, I think it starts to blend in. I may add a little bit of brown to it as well. In fact, I think a very small amount of watered down Vallejo brown paint. It's proving to be a bit hard to remember what paints I did use on the retaining wall that's already there on the left, but I'm sure I used a bit of a grey, and it would have been watercolours and Vallejo, so I've put a little bit of leather brown Vallejo in the airbrush, and I'm going to have a little go with that to see if it sort of blends a bit better, because I'm sure I would have used that as well. But it's all a bit of a guesswork, unless you make a note of the exact paints you used. It's yeah, guesswork, as I said. So I'm going to spray this on the test piece above and have another little go with it. It's not bad. If I turn the light off, it probably looks a bit better. Possibly want to maybe put a bit of lacquer on it. Maybe that's what it's lacking. It looks a bit too flat. So a bit of lacquer in a second, I think, might not go amiss when this dries. I've just given it a coat of rail match setting varnish, which is giving it a little bit more life, sort of thing. It's made it not shiny, but brought it back from being just total matte, because you're dealing with paper and flat paints like watercolours. It can make the paint look totally dull. So as well as protecting cardboard, it's handy to varnish things, you know, just to bring out a bit more of a shine on them, really, without them being gloss. So hopefully that matches a bit with the rest of the wall on the left. And I suppose it's a bit dirtier, but you can sort of make excuses for that, as it's right near the tunnel entrance. There would have been big clouds of smoke from years ago when there were steam engines going through it and out of it, and not to mention diesel fumes and smoke as well, even in the 1980s. So I've hopefully blended it to some sort of degree. I'm now going to add back some bushes and undergrowth, and that's pretty much it, really. and a little bit of line side junk as well. Well, it's all back together now, and still needs to dry a bit. I must admit, I've never thought this part of the layout is that too convincing, but it's a compromise, like most things on the model railway. I had to have some way of getting the trains up to the upper level, and they do this by starting an incline as they go in the tunnel, but it looks far better with the completed retaining wall in the background rather than a slight bit of a cliff like there used to be. So the guy who mentioned it, he was right, and in the long term it is worth doing, I think. When I started to build this layout, I always had it in my mind that I wanted it to be scenic all the way round, really. So it's 90% scenic. I haven't got a lot of hidden out the way storage areas, which is a sort of a problem, something I might address in the future. But I did want a lot of scenery, as it's not a mobile layout. It's not going to go to any shows or anything. It just sits in the loft, and it's nice to have scenery everywhere you look rather than bare baseboard. But it does mean you have to compromise in certain areas that don't really look right, just to join things up, as the distances are shorter than they would be in reality. And so something like this area is never going to really look right, as there's too many tracks converging just to achieve the layout design, you might say. But I still do my best to try and blend it together. But this area's never been totally right, as I used to have a bridge instead of a tunnel, and in one of my previous updates from a few years ago, you'll notice that I went for a tunnel instead of this bridge, as there's a village on the other side, and it just didn't look right. And to be honest, even having a tunnel heading towards a village is not great, but to try and make it believable that the tunnel at least could be bending round to the right and going nowhere near the village, but it was a compromise, like I said. I've been busy carrying on with my station maintenance yard. I stripped it with all the bits and pieces and weathered it, and generally sort of messed up all the ballast and stuff that I've got in the yard by just colouring it with different colour paints for the airbrush. And I've actually airbrushed some of the vehicles to make them look like they got mud up them, and then been hunting around for more junk really to fill it up. So it's not looking bad. I've got more detail to add, and I shall continue to add stuff to it. One thing that was spotted in my last video was that my roll train didn't have a tail light or tail lamp on the back, and I'd missed this off. But one of the reasons I had missed it off because I'd run out of them, and I bought some more because I have done most of my coaches, but I hadn't done the roll train, so I've just bought some more. I use these lamps that are produced by Springside Models, and you just break them off a sprue, and I just tack them on the back. Maybe one day I'll get into having a flashing tail lamp on the back, lighting it up via the track, but for now just putting a crystal lensed cast lamp is good enough. So I'll just put that in place. Somewhere about there. Okay. Right, that's a tiny little bit of glue holding it go off, and my roll train's now got tail lamp. Other little bits I've been up to is I finally managed to get hold of some bogey frames for this Class 33. This Class 33 I managed to pick up for a bargain price of £20, I think it was. It's a Helgen, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, except it had one of the bogey frames missing. So I just waited until a set came up on that auction site, and put them in place, weathered it, and I think this loco now looks the part on the layout. Also picked up this OBA wagon, I think it's called, for a bargain price of £2 actually, from a little sort of freight come market I went to, and there was a junk stall, and amongst the junk there was some old model railway stuff, but I spotted this, expecting it to be expensive, but I asked the guy how much and he said £2, and I couldn't wait to get £2 in his hand. There's a broken buffer on it, but other than that I should be able to fix that. It was a real bargain for £2. Also, after making these flower containers, I thought I'd have a go at just doing a flower border in front of the station, and that's come out rather good as well. Quite like that. Just the same method as before. I've been carrying on with the electrification, with finishing more of the gantries along this side, putting the register arms and insulators on them, putting them in place, and along here they're all done. I've still got more single gantries to do, whatever, but along this area I've finished putting them in place, as far as I'm going to do the electrification, that is. Also added a rather nice class 419 baggage DMU, or it's EMU, beg your pardon, EMU, to the collection. Got this for a reasonable price, and it was like new, even though it's second hand. Runs a little bit noisy, but other than that it's a good addition. Still got this Hornby decoder, sound decoder, that I want to try out, that I've had now for about 6 weeks plus, waiting for the Android app, as I haven't got any Apple systems I can run it on. So my tablet over here is an Android, my phone is an Android, so I can't use it at the moment, which is a bit of a nuisance. So I just hope Hornby get on with this, as I won't be buying any more till I can try this one out and see what I think of it. I'm continuing to add lights to the layout, including lights like this street light down here, but I got one second hand and quite impressed with it, so I searched out where they were from, and I've bought a whole load more to put in place in various places around the layout. Probably have a go at lighting this road up and into the village. I might even put another one along this path. I use some, I forgot what it's called now. I think it's what I used. It's a yellowing acrylic sort of stain that I used on my teak coaches, Seraphine or something like that, and I just coated the LED with it just to give it a a sort of a yellowy look rather than a bright white LED, and I think it improved it, and I'll probably do the same to the other lights when I put it in place. Right, now I've finished doing the retaining wall, taking it up to the tunnel mouth. I'm now looking at the undergrowth, thinking I want to improve the undergrowth and make it a bit more like the embankments I've done in the past. So I'm going to remove some of this and add some polyfibre and scatter like I've done on my other embankments, the same sort of technique. So I'll be removing some of this big stuff, which I may put back later, but for now I'm removing it, and I'm looking to have sort of more sort of random foliage, I suppose, rather than this bulky sort of bushes everywhere. I'm going to use more Seafoam. I think I'll probably leave a bunch of trees and stuff here, or small bushes, but just add some polyfibre towards the bottom. And this part, if you remember in one of my previous updates, was a part I cut away to get into the tunnel underneath to retrieve a loco that had fallen over. So should I need to get in there again, there is a cutaway here, so I won't clutter it up too much, as I might need to get in there at some point. Now I've got the area protected, I'll start the process, which is getting the polyfibre, getting a nice lump of it, and then just pulling it and stretching it until you got some sort of very fine hairnet, so it's all spread out. Keep going and spreading it. Yeah, that's going to look okay. And then I'll get my trusty worn out PVA dispenser that was given to me by one of my daughters, which had something in it, heating cream or something, but it's been absolutely brilliant. But it's so worn out, it's splitting here and there and looks a bit of a mess, so I'll be looking to get a new one of these. But it does work well, because I can just spot the glue on here and there. So just spots of glue when it starts coming out there. Well, it don't always work, does it? Because it's now blocked from coming out the lid. But never mind, I'll use it as it's coming out the lid. I told you I need a new one. Anyway, spots of glue, I'll sort that out in a minute. Spots of glue around the polyfibre like that. And then when you've got enough on, choose where you're going to put it. And I want this to hang down the embankment quite a bit, just to take some of that hardness of the landscape away, soften it a bit. Alright, and I'll just carry on doing that. It looks like my container's going to live to fight another day, because I managed to unblock it. It was blocked and I didn't see it, So I'll carry on using it to destruction, you might say. Right, part is all done, and we're now ready to apply the next process, which will be spraying with lacquer and then adding scatter and then a highlight in scatter colour. If you want to see how I've done this in more detail, I did a tutorial on one of my previous updates, and it was called the Big Embankment Project. And if you sort of scroll to the end of that, I did a tutorial on how I did this technique, you might say, if you're interested in having a go. finished adding the Seafoam now, and it's now time to tidy up and make sure the locos run over the rails again by cleaning any overspray of lacquer off and hoovering up unwanted scatter. So put quite a bit of Seafoam on. I would say just as you think you've got enough on it, add twice as much, and it starts to look a bit more realistic each time you add more, really. So for now I'm happy with that, but there's always room for improvement, but this definitely is an improvement over my previous effort in this area. Now finally, just to wipe the rails with a cleaning cloth, which has got some of the liquid I use to stop it tarnishing, so it protects the track again and makes it less likely to oxidise. By doing this process, I don't have to clean my track very often, actually. Now I've cleaned all the track, I can run the trains. There's just some white PVA glue holding some of the Seafoam in place. That's got to finally dry. I think the lacquer's already pretty much dry with the ventilation I got coming through the window. All the trains are running again okay. Now I've cleaned the track, even though I did have one problem that led me to believe it was dirty track. My blue and grey HST started playing up, and sure enough, Ormy's done it to me again. These flimsy wires, and numerous times I've had to resolder them onto the bogies. Wires just popped off again, just barely soldered on, and the HST unit was hopping about all over the place, not getting any contact. Pain in the rear. It was rather a delicate operation, so I couldn't really film it, as I had to get the soldering iron tip down in there and resolder this wire back on this tag without melting the bogies or melting anything else, which is no real problem to me because I do that sort of thing daily and find stuff I work on, but still a pain, and it meant I had to get my my electric solder iron out, because I didn't go in there with a gas one, because that definitely would have melted the bogie. So the trials and tribulations of running a model railway. All up and running again. And this led me to think it was the track that was dirty, but all along it was a wire just fallen off. So that's it. We're running nicely again. That's it for this update. I probably won't be back for a little while, as it's now starting to get quite warm in the loft, so I can't see myself doing too much more at the moment. Plus I've got a lot of other life commitments at the moment, so there may be a little while between between now and the next update, as the heat and life generally sort of stops me doing much more to the layout. But as for now, this part of the layout is starting to look a little bit better. So thanks for watching, and thanks for your continued following and subscription of the channel. It's really appreciated, and who knows, if I hit 2,000 subscribers, I might be thinking of a special update. Bye for now.